Admiral Kim of the Galactic Confederation stood motionless as the holographic display showed Earth for the first time. This small blue planet, third from its yellow star, looked unremarkable compared to the thousands of worlds already catalogued by Confederation explorers. Yet protocol demanded thorough assessment of all potential member species. His assistant Ba scrolled through preliminary data on a transparent tablet. The inhabitants call themselves humans. Oxygen breathers, carbon-based, bilateral symmetry. Another developing world, Kim remarked, his four-fingered hand adjusting the collar of his formal gray uniform. Level 3 technology, barely achieved interplanetary travel. Ba continued scanning the information gathered by their long-range probes. The data streams had been collecting for nearly a standard year before this official review. Population approximately 9 billion. They've established colonies on their moon and the fourth planet. Some mining operations in their asteroid belt. Kim nodded absently. The Confederation had seen countless species at this stage of development. Most were suitable for protectorate status, given limited access to Confederation knowledge while being closely monitored for proper cultural development. "There's something unusual, sir," Ba said, her voice dropping slightly. "Their historical records show an unsettling pattern." Kim turned his attention fully to his assistant now. Ba was not easily disturbed. She had processed intake assessments for 17 different species during her career. "Show me," Kim ordered. Ba expanded a section of her data screen, transferring it to the main holographic display. Kim leaned forward as Earth's military history unfolded before him. Thousands of wars, millions of weapons innovations, billions dead in conflicts spanning millennia. "By the void," Kim whispered, using an old religious expression he rarely uttered. "They've spent more time at war than at peace." The display showed battles fought with primitive stone tools, then metal weapons, then increasingly sophisticated projectile technologies. The pace of innovation accelerated dramatically in their recent centuries. Chemical weapons, nuclear devices, and finally precision kinetic systems. They appear to have developed space travel primarily as an extension of military competition. Ba noted, most of their early satellites were for surveillance and targeting. Kim watched footage of human combat exercises. Their movements were quick, decisive. They showed a concerning comfort with violence that most Confederation species had evolved beyond thousands of years ago. Science Officer Lee joined them, her steps quick and light across the observation deck. Unlike Kim and Ba, who viewed the data with concern, Lee's eyes showed excitement. "Fascinating findings, Admiral," she said. "These humans have developed along an entirely different evolutionary path than any Confederation species." "Explain," Kim said. "All 27 member species of the Confederation evolved through cooperation," Lee said. "Our ancestral forms survived by forming mutually beneficial relationships. But these humans, they evolved through competition. Their ancestors survived by outfighting predators and rival groups." Lee pulled up her own data screens. Their neural architecture shows heightened threat response systems. They can form social bonds rapidly under pressure. They develop hierarchical command structures instinctively during crisis. "You sound impressed," Kim noted with disapproval. "From a scientific perspective, they're remarkable," Lee replied. "Admiral, I recommend we classify humans as a special observation case. Their evolutionary path through conflict rather than cooperation is unprecedented. We should study them carefully before offering membership." "Denied," Kim said firmly. "The Council has already approved first contact. We'll proceed as planned, but with caution." Lee began to protest but stopped herself. The Admiral outranked her, and Confederation hierarchy was clear. "Prepare the diplomatic shuttle," Kim instructed. "Standard first contact protocol. We'll land at their most populous city." "That would be New Shanghai," Ba corrected. "But their governing councils have requested we land in Seoul instead. Apparently, they wish to show regional diversity." Kim nodded. "Very well. Seoul it is." 2 days later, The gleaming silver diplomatic vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere. Human defense systems tracked its arrival, but no hostile actions were taken. The ship settled gently in an open area prepared for their arrival. When the Confederation delegation walked down the extended ramp, they were greeted by a small group of humans in formal attire. A tall man stepped forward from the group. "I am Han, Earth's appointed ambassador," he said in carefully practiced galactic standard. The translation technology the Confederation had provided in advance had clearly been studied thoroughly. Kim performed the formal greeting gesture, right hand open, left hand closed, both pressed to the chest. "On behalf of the 27 worlds of the Galactic Confederation, I extend greetings to Earth," Kim said. "We welcome this opportunity for peaceful exchange." Han smiled, but Kim noticed the expression didn't reach his eyes. There was calculation there, assessment. "Welcome to Earth," Han replied with a slight bow. "We look forward to joining your peaceful collective." The emphasis on peaceful was subtle but unmistakable. Kim realized that Earth had already been studying the Confederation just as thoroughly as the Confederation had been studying Earth. As they walked toward the welcome ceremony, Kim watched the human security personnel positioned discreetly around the perimeter. They moved with precision and alertness that reminded him of predator species. Kim suddenly understood that these humans might wear diplomatic smiles, but they had the minds of warriors. The Admiral made a mental note to recommend increased caution in all dealings with Earth. These humans were unlike any species the Confederation had encountered before. The emergency alert woke Director Park at 3:17 in the morning. He reached for his secure tablet, and the grim news loaded immediately. The Kuiper Belt Research Station, humanity's farthest outpost in the solar system, had gone silent. All 14 researchers on board were presumed dead. By the time he reached the presidential complex in Seoul, analysts had confirmed the worst. This was no accident. President Song was already in the crisis room when Park arrived. The room was designed to be calming. Soft blue walls, comfortable chairs, but nothing could ease the tension filling the air. 14 dead, Director Park said, sliding the report across the polished table. "The purifiers hit our research station without warning." President Song's face remained still as she examined the images from the attack. The purifiers, a xenophobic splinter group from the outer reaches of the Confederation, had been vocal in their opposition to humanity's inclusion. They had declared humans an evolutionary mistake and vowed to correct the Confederation's error in accepting Earth. Now they had moved beyond words to action. "The Confederation has issued formal regrets," Song noted, setting aside an official communication tablet, "along with a timeline for investigation and potential action in approximately 6 standard months." Park replied dryly. "By then, the purifiers will have disappeared into the outer systems." Song looked around the table at her advisors. General Choi sat rigidly in his uniform, waiting. Foreign Minister Ju appeared troubled, while Defense Secretary Min stared intently at the attack footage playing on a wall screen. "Minister Ju," Song said, "your assessment." "The Confederation is bound by its own laws," Ju explained. "Their justice system requires extensive evidence gathering, multiple hearings, and unanimous council approval for military action. The process cannot be expedited." "And in the meantime?" Park asked. "They recommend we improve our defensive capabilities and wait for justice to take its course," Ju said. The room fell silent. Everyone present understood what this meant. The Confederation, for all its advanced technology and proclaimed ideals of peace, operated at a pace that humans found frustratingly slow. Their species had evolved without Earth's predators and territorial conflicts. They approached problems with deliberation, not urgency. "General Choi," Song said finally, "what is your assessment of our capabilities against the purifiers?" Choi straightened even further. "Madam President, in the 5 years since first contact, we have studied Confederation technology extensively. While we don't match their theoretical knowledge, we've adapted what we've learned with remarkable speed. Could we mount an effective response?" Song pressed. The Seventh Fleet has been retrofitted with modified Confederation dry systems, Choi said. Our weapons systems have been enhanced based on principles we've observed. We lack experience in interstellar combat, but the purifiers are poorly organized and overconfident. Song considered this information silently. The decision before her was momentous. No human military force had ever engaged in combat beyond the solar system. The diplomatic implications were enormous. After a long pause, Song pressed a button on the table console. General Choi, deploy the Seventh Fleet. Authorization code Delta 9. Yes, Madam President, Choi replied, standing immediately. The fleet will launch within 6 hours. As the general left to issue orders, Minister Ju leaned forward anxiously. Madam President, the Confederation explicitly recommended against independent action. This could jeopardize our standing. The Confederation has its ways, Song replied evenly. We have ours. 14 humans are dead. If we wait for Confederation justice, more will die. The purifiers must learn that attacking humans carries immediate consequences. 3 weeks passed. On the Confederation capital world, Admiral Kim was reviewing routine reports when an urgent transmission arrived from the border monitoring station. His assistant Ba entered his office with unusual haste. Admiral, she said, you need to see this immediately. Kim activated his holographic display. The footage showed what remained of the purifier base on Heslick 3, a frozen moon in the outer systems, or rather, what didn't remain. The entire facility had been reduced to scattered debris. Tactical analysis indicated precision strikes had first disabled defenses, then communication systems, before methodically destroying every critical structure. Impossible, Kim muttered. More footage arrived. The human fleet had not just attacked one base, but systematically eliminated every known purifier outpost in 3 different star systems. The operation had been executed with shocking efficiency. Additional intelligence reports revealed the humans had somehow infiltrated purifier communication networks before attacking. They had sent false information, creating confusion about which outposts were under attack. They had used electronic warfare techniques to turn the purifiers' own defense systems against them. They achieved in 3 weeks what our planning committee estimated would require a year-long campaign, Bai noted. Within days, Kim found himself addressing an emergency session of the Confederation Council. Representatives from all 27 member species had gathered to discuss what many were calling the human problem. The humans did not simply defeat the purifiers, Kim explained, displaying tactical analyses. They obliterated them. The humans used tactics the Confederation military couldn't comprehend. Feints within feints, psychological warfare, and a willingness to sacrifice that no modern species possessed. The council chamber filled with concerned murmurs. The representative from Zoral, a species known for their logical approach, raised a tentacle for attention. Did they violate any Confederation laws in their response? The Zoralian asked. Technically, no, Kim admitted. They attacked only confirmed purifier bases. They gave opportunity for surrender. They took no action against civilian targets. Then why does this concern us? Asked another representative. Kim displayed final footage of the campaign, showing the last purifier stronghold collapsing under precision bombardment. They fight like our ancestors did before civilization, Kim told the council, his voice grave. But with modern technology and methodical precision, they don't just defeat enemies. They break their will to fight. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. Humanity had revealed itself not as a developing species in need of guidance, but as a military force unlike anything the peaceful Confederation had seen in thousands of years. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Confederation was rarely filled to capacity. Today, however, every seat was taken. Representatives from all 27 member species had gathered for what many called the most important vote in 500 years. The chamber itself was a marvel of alien architecture, a perfect dome with walls that shifted colors according to the emotional tenor of discussions. Today they pulsed with anxious amber. At the center of the chamber stood Counselor Jin, chief representative of the founding species. His tall, slender form was draped in the formal blue robes of his office. The chamber's lighting highlighted the silvery patterns on his skin as he addressed the assembled representatives. "We have reviewed all evidence regarding the human response to the purifier attacks," Jin said. His voice was calm, but many noticed the slight tremor in his lower limbs, a sign of stress his species could not hide. "We have also studied the complete history of human warfare, which spans over 10,000 years. Holoprojections appeared around the chamber, showing scenes from human conflicts through the ages. Ancient warriors with spears and shields, armies of soldiers firing primitive projectile weapons, modern tactical units with advanced weaponry. In all our history," Jin continued, "the Confederation has never encountered a species whose development was so shaped by conflict." In the diplomatic viewing section, Representative One of Earth sat silently. As the sole human present, he had been the subject of many nervous glances throughout the proceedings. One maintained perfect composure, his hands folded neatly on his lap, his expression revealing nothing. "The question before us is not whether humans are dangerous," Jin said. "The evidence clearly indicates they are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. The question is how we should respond to this fact." A representative from the aquatic world of Medros raised a webbed hand. "I propose exclusion. The humans should be isolated until they evolve beyond their violent tendencies." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber, but Jin raised a hand for silence. "The Committee for Interspecies Relations has considered this option and found it impractical," he said. "Humans have already acquired significant knowledge of Confederation technology. More importantly, they have demonstrated both the will and the ability to act independently beyond their solar system." The implications hung in the air. Trying to contain humans now would likely lead to conflict, the very outcome the Confederation wished to avoid. "The committee proposes instead a dual approach," Jin said. "First, we must protect ourselves from potential human aggression. Second, we must channel human military capabilities in ways that benefit the Confederation rather than threaten it." The final vote was tallied on the great display above Jin's head. The chamber fell silent as the numbers appeared. 24 in favor, 2 opposed, 1 abstention. Jin's voice carried clearly through the hushed chamber. "Galactic Law 714 is hereby enacted. It shall be prohibited for any Confederation member to provoke or engage in hostile actions against humans of Earth." In the viewing section, Representative One kept his expression neutral despite his satisfaction. The law effectively granted humanity special status within the Confederation, a recognition of power rather than just formal equality. Furthermore, Jin continued, humans are reclassified from protectorate species to autonomous military consultants. This second announcement caused even more stir. Protectorate status meant supervision and restrictions. Consultant status meant partnership and access. As the session concluded, One made his way through crowds of representatives, many of whom created space around him as he passed, a subtle but unmistakable sign of their new caution around humans. Later that evening, Admiral Kim found Counselor Jin alone in one of the private meditation chambers that overlooked the capital city's glittering skyline. "I wanted to discuss the Council's decision privately," Kim said without formal greeting. Jin nodded. "I expected you would." "This is unprecedented," Kim argued, pacing the small room. "No species has ever been granted such status without centuries of integration. We're essentially admitting we fear them." "With good reason," Jin replied, his gaze fixed on the distant lights of the city. "Our xenobiologists have completed their assessment of human psychology. Their findings are troubling." Jin activated a small projector, displaying brain scans of various species. "All Confederation species show similar patterns. Our brains evolved to prioritize social harmony, cooperation, and consensus. Violence is possible that requires overriding natural impulses." Jin changed the display to human brain scans. "Humans are different. Their threat response systems are highly developed. Their brains release pleasure chemicals when they overcome challenges or defeat competitors. You're saying violence is natural to them, Kim said. I'm saying our xenobiologists believe humans evolved in an environment that required constant vigilance against predators and competing tribes. Their entire neurological structure is optimized for warfare. Kim stared out at the peaceful city below. For thousands of years, the Confederation had expanded through diplomacy and cultural exchange. The idea of a species that expanded through force was difficult to comprehend. And now we'd given them access to Confederation technology, Kim said quietly. The implications were clear. Humans had demonstrated remarkable ability to adapt alien technology to their own purposes. They had already incorporated Confederation principles into their weapons and defenses. Jin nodded grimly. Let's hope we never give them reason to use it against us. What about the dissenters? Kim asked. 2 species voted against the law. The Volar and the Tresians, Jin confirmed. They believe we should take more aggressive action to contain the human threat. That would be a grave mistake, Kim said. The humans' response to the purifiers demonstrated their capabilities. A direct confrontation would be disastrous. I agree, Jin said. That's why Law 714 is necessary. It protects humans from provocation, while giving us time to better understand them. As they spoke, in another part of the vast Confederation complex, Representative 1 was sending his report back to Earth. His message was simple. The wolf has convinced the sheep that it should guard the flock. The emergency broadcast interrupted all Confederation communications with a harsh, repeated tone designed to cut through any background noise. This is not a drill, announced a calm voice that nonetheless carried unmistakable urgency. Sectors 7 through 12 have fallen to Hive forces. All civilian vessels are ordered to evacuate immediately. On thousands of worlds across the Confederation, beings of every description stopped and listened with growing horror. The Hive was not supposed to be real. It was a theoretical threat, a story used to frighten children, a hypothetical enemy used in strategic planning exercises. But it was real. The Hive, a collective consciousness controlling billions of bioengineered warriors, had arrived from the neighboring galaxy. Early reports described their ships as massive organic structures that seemed to breathe and pulse. Their weapons were biological, firing streams of corrosive compounds that ate through Confederation shields as if they were paper. Admiral Kim stood in the Central Command Center, watching as red warning indicators spread across the galactic map. Confederation defenses, designed for small-scale peacekeeping operations, crumbled before the Hive's onslaught. How did we miss this? Kim demanded, his normally composed voice breaking with emotion. They came through the Vorlon Gap, his tactical officer explained. We had minimal sensor coverage there. By the time we detected them, they had already established a foothold. 3 days later, Councillor Jin called an emergency session of the Confederation Council. The Grand Chamber, usually orderly and dignified, was in chaos. Many representatives attended via holographic projection, unable or unwilling to leave their homeworlds during the crisis. Jin raised his arms for silence, but it took several minutes for the panicked discussions to quiet. The situation is grave, Jin admitted once he could be heard. Our forces are retreating on all fronts. 6 major worlds have already fallen. Billions of citizens are displaced. What does the Hive want? Called out a representative. According to our xenobiologists, they don't want anything in the way we understand, Jin explained. They are a biological superorganism. They expand because expansion is their nature. They consume because consumption is their purpose. The chamber erupted again in fearful discussion. Jin waited patiently until he could continue. Our conventional defenses have proven ineffective against their biological technology. Our weapons cannot penetrate their organic shields. Our strategies cannot counter their hive-mind coordination. Jin paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives of the Confederation's 27 species. Each had evolved through cooperation rather than conflict. Their societies valued consensus, not confrontation. For thousands of years, this had been their strength. Now, it was their weakness. "We need the humans," Counselor Jin admitted finally. The statement hung in the air. Many representatives shifted uncomfortably. The humans, with their strange warlike ways, had been kept at arm's length by most Confederation species despite Law 714's official protections. "The humans have no experience with interstellar warfare," objected the Trescian representative. "Neither did we," Jin countered, "until 3 days ago." The Council's request for military assistance reached Earth within hours. In the Strategic Command Center beneath Seoul, General Moon considered the Hive threat assessment. The holographic displays showed the advancing Hive forces as a spreading red stain across the galaxy map. Moon was a small woman with steel-gray hair cut in a practical style. Her uniform bore minimal decorations despite her numerous accomplishments. She had been among the first humans to study Confederation military doctrine, or rather, the lack thereof. "The Confederation doesn't understand what they're asking," she told her staff, who sat around the circular strategy table. "They want military assistance. What they'll get is human warfare." "Do we have enough ships?" asked Colonel Ryu, her head of operations. "We have enough," Moon confirmed. "Since first contact, we've been adapting Confederation technology to our purposes. We now have 40 battle-ready vessels with crews trained for deep space combat, against an enemy we've never encountered," pointed out another officer. "Every human military in history has had to adapt to new enemies and conditions," Moon said firmly. "This is no different. Commander Yoon will lead the first battle group. The rest will deploy as they become ready." 3 days later, Commander Yoon's battle group arrived at Proxima Centauri, where Hive forces had established a major staging area. The 10 human ships were small compared to the massive Hive biovessels, which resembled floating mountains of flesh and chitin. Yoon stood on the bridge of his flagship, the New Horizon. At 42, he was young for such a command, but his brilliance in tactical simulations had elevated him quickly. Analysis of Hive communications suggests they coordinate through a central node on each major vessel, Yoon told his captains via secure link. "Our mission is not to destroy their fleet, but to disrupt their command structure." The human strategy unfolded in stages. First, 3 ships launched what appeared to be a frontal assault, a seemingly suicidal move that drew the attention of the largest Hive vessels. Meanwhile, 4 smaller ships slipped around the system's outer edge, using the local star's radiation to mask their approach. The Hive had never encountered an enemy that used deception, that attacked weaknesses rather than strengths, that sacrificed pieces to win the game. Their Hive mind expected opponents to behave logically, to preserve their forces, to retreat when threatened. The humans did none of these things. When the battle ended, 7 of the 10 human ships had sustained damage, 2 of them critically. But the Hive staging area had been completely neutralized. The biological ships, cut off from their command structure, had turned on each other in confusion. After the battle, Admiral Kim watched the human ships dock at the Confederation outpost near Alpha Centauri. Despite the damage they had sustained, the vessels moved with precision into their assigned berths. "They did in 3 days what we couldn't do in 3 months, he told Ba, who stood beside him at the observation window. "Perhaps we were right to fear them." Ba nodded slowly. "The question now is whether we should fear them more than the Hive." The war against the Hive lasted 4 brutal months. Where Confederation forces had retreated, human battle groups advanced. Where Confederation tactics had failed, human strategy succeeded. The Hive, for all its biological superiority, found itself outmatched not in strength but in adaptability. Commander Yoon, who had led the successful first strike at Proxima Centauri, now stood before the Combined War Council. Around the large circular table sat the highest military and political authorities of both the Confederation and Earth. Counselor Jin represented the Confederation leadership, while Admiral Kim led their military forces. General Moon and Representative One attended for Earth. The room was tense. The latest campaign had pushed Hive forces back to their final stronghold, a massive space station constructed from the remains of a small moon. Victory seemed within reach. Yoon's presentation had just ended with an unexpected conclusion. "You want to let the hive retreat?" Counselor Jin asked incredulously. "After what they've done? They've destroyed entire worlds. Billions of our people are dead or displaced." Around the table, Confederation representatives nodded in agreement. After months of fear and loss, the desire for complete victory, for revenge, was strong. Yoon remained calm. She was younger than most of the officers present, but the months of successful combat had earned her respect from both humans and aliens. "Annihilation isn't victory," Yoon replied simply. "We've broken their offensive capability. Their fleet is reduced to 30% of its original strength. We've disrupted their command structure. Now we offer terms." "What terms could possibly be appropriate?" asked a Zorelian representative, his tentacles twisting with emotion. "Restricted territory in the outer systems," Yoon explained. "Limited reproductive rights, regular inspections, technology sharing." "You expect the hive to share technology?" Admiral Kim asked skeptically. "Their biological engineering is far beyond our understanding," Yoon said. "In exchange for peace, they would provide access to medical applications of their biotech. Applications that could benefit billions across the Confederation." The room erupted in overlapping voices. The idea of negotiating with the hive seemed impossible to many. Yoon waited patiently for order to return. "Your species shows mercy." Admiral Kim couldn't hide his surprise when the room quieted. After fighting with such intensity, it was a fair question. Human forces had been relentless in battle, employing tactics that shocked even veteran Confederation observers. They had shown a willingness to sacrifice ships and sometimes lives to achieve strategic objectives. Yoon smiled, surprising those who knew her only as a serious military commander. "We fight hard so we can afford to be generous in victory. A cornered enemy fights to the death. An enemy offered dignity may become tomorrow's ally." "This is a military principle for humans?" Counselor Jin asked. "It's a lesson from our history," Yoon explained. "After our most destructive global war, the victors helped rebuild the defeated nations instead of punishing them. Former enemies became strong allies and trading partners." General Moon nodded in agreement. "Humans understand that how you end a war is as important as how you fight it." The council debated for hours. Many Confederation representatives remained skeptical, but faced with the alternative, a prolonged final battle with uncertain casualties, they eventually agreed to Yoon's proposal. 2 weeks later, the first communication channel with the hive was established. To everyone's surprise, the collective consciousness accepted the terms with minor modifications. It seemed even a biological superorganism could recognize when adaptation was preferable to extinction. 6 months after the peace agreement, the Confederation Council convened in its grand chamber. The mood was dramatically different from the panic-filled emergency session that had begun the conflict. Now representatives spoke with hope and even optimism about the future. Counselor Jin stood at the center of the chamber, his ceremonial robes gleaming under the lights. "Today we mark a new chapter in Confederation history," he announced. "The hive threat has been contained. Reconstruction of damaged worlds has begun, and much of this progress we owe to our human allies." The chamber filled with the various sounds of approval from 27 different species. In recognition of humanity's contribution, and in acknowledgement of their unique capabilities, I propose an amendment to Galactic Law 714. The vote was quick and unanimous. The text appeared on screens throughout the chamber. "Never provoke humans, the masters of war, but cherish them as the guardians of peace." Representative 1 accepted the amended law with a formal bow. For the first time, humans were recognized not just for their capacity for violence, but for their understanding of how to build lasting peace. As rehabilitation ships departed for former hive territory, Admiral Kim approached Representative 1 in the observation lounge overlooking the spaceport. The ships below carried medical teams, engineers, and scientists who would help transform devastated worlds. "I study your history since we met," Kim admitted, watching the ships lift off one by one. "I thought your species was dangerous because you perfected war. Now I understand. You perfected war because your true skill is adaptation." One nodded thoughtfully. Humans had gone from being feared outsiders to essential allies in less than a year. Their status in the Confederation had transformed completely. "The question is, what will humans become next?" Kim asked. One looked out at the stars visible beyond the departing ships. The countless points of light represented not just worlds to explore but possibilities to discover. Humanity had proven itself in war. Now they would have the chance to prove themselves in peace. "That's what we're all waiting to see," one replied. In the months that followed, human influence spread throughout the Confederation. Their methods of problem-solving, their creativity, their willingness to take calculated risks, all these qualities brought new vitality to a civilization that had grown comfortable in its stability. And far away on the edges of known space, the first joint human hive research facility began its work, turning weapons of war into tools of healing. The galaxy watched and wondered what humans would become next. But whatever it was, they would not face the future alone. The end.